I was watching some of these video blogs, and it was playing in the background as I was listening, and well, after yours, then somebody else pops up in the feed, horrendous, pushing. They were pushing. I said, whoa, what? Who is on Michael's show? How is this?
4, 3, 2, 1.
We gotta work on the problems. We gotta link up to solve them. We gotta keep on evolving. Gotta be side by side. Give it up. Gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side. Yeah. We gotta be side by side. Gotta be side by side. We gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side.
Welcome to Talks with Tatum. This is the Side by Side podcast, and we're so happy that you're here. And today we got a really, really special guest. I've gotten in the habit of saying that every single time.
They're all special.
But today's really, really special, and one that I've been really looking forward to. I've got a really, really good friend, a person that I've looked up to over all of these years, Reverend Jimmy Spear, in the house today.
Yes.
Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. I always like talking to Michael Tatum about whatever we're talking about. There's a perspective and real life to be talked about in a good back and forth. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I got to tell a story to kick things off. The very first time that I ever met you, I think we were at it had to be some type of regional thing, maybe a camp type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'd heard people talk about you before. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of this myth.
There's a reputation that, yeah.
Yeah. And then I saw you for the first time, and I was like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? This kind of cool guy that just walks in with this swagger, and he's
only in our dreams.
Dressed nicely, and he just kind of carries an aura around him. And then I asked a couple people about you. Oh, that's Jimmy Spear. He's a cool guy. Blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, wasn't brave enough to interact with you at that point. Then we have some type of interaction later, and you get to be the person that's in charge of this college group that I get to participate in, and I get to see you in your full ministry capacity, and then we develop a friendship over the years, and I get to work for you.
Well, intern time at the church, right?
I just get to learn all of these habits, and I can't thank you enough for all of the things that I got to watch over all of this time that I've known you, and all these things that I've picked up. I picked up different kind of fashion things from you. I picked up different kinds of life things from you. I picked up so many relational kind of things from you in the way that I walk through ministry and interact with people. But
sometimes you find people that click in ministry in the same way. We all have different types of habits and ways of doing ministry, doing life and ministry, the combination, and you and I share some of those, and so we're able to laugh about them, have joy in them, be challenged by them. I think maybe I thought about coming in today that I thought, now if there was ever anybody that I should probably put on a bow tie for, and Michael and I could bring the same look to the occasion. Today's casual day, but which is a rarity among a lot of people,
we could bow tie it up. We get to do that.
It's not the time of day for tight-necked neck order.
So you make this commitment to live this life, which is not for the faint of heart. This preacher life, as you look at numbers, especially in the world today, I mean, this is a profession that people burn out of at an alarmingly high rate. Mm-hmm. And you've been in this thing for a good number of years, and you commit as a very young person to doing this. Where does...
I've been wondering, I don't remember talking about the burnout when I got into it some, 20 plus years ago. And we didn't speak of that, probably because people weren't realizing that it was happening. It was happening, but they weren't careful about it. Mm. But I think we're finding more carefulness with clergy, probably with a lot of professions, but in the church especially. Church-minded people are, wanting to take care of their pastor. My personnel review this year, they were like, we just want to make sure that you're doing okay and that you're taking care of yourself and that you don't burn out. Churches are mindful that their pastors burn out, and I think we're becoming more mindful too. And it can happen. We have days it's like, I can go do something else.
Definitely a post pandemic kind of mentality of really kind of paying attention to that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think now we're able to address that a little differently. People, if you come up with a different way of self-care or time off that's a little more creative, or working from different venues than the office or than the places that you always had to be found accountable to a time and place, it's not strange to have that conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
That probably affects a lot of people's work life, but pastors especially. Which is good. But you're right, people are burning out, or they're not going into it because it's just the potential of burnout can be there.
Yeah, I mean, your former seminary, right?
Yeah.
Sells that land in the ground and moves to entirely being online.
Ministries. I have watched it completely. Well, we all say it completely changed, but I don't know. I feel like it has. It's completely changed the landscape of church.
In the years that you've been doing ministry,
20 years,
there's been a lot of shifts. But you have this call to ministry, and you ultimately start to pursue it, and you've had some really interesting stops along the way. But how does the origin story start?
Yeah, the origin story started because I happened to go to a denominationally related college, and that kind of kick-started the professional part of it. But really, my home church, that's the place that, it was all the churches where I found myself as a kid, as a young person, where my family attended. The church camps that were because of that, the youth experiences were because of that. Even searching for colleges, we didn't just look at Disciples, Christian Church Disciples colleges, but we did look at some of them, and I happened to go to one, not thinking about ministry or that there was going to be a connection there, except that I was familiar with it.
Yeah.
And our name was on the sign. Oh, nice coincidence. But so the church really made that happen. That it was a safe place to know God, to be with my family, to know other people of all ages, and to have an extended family. So that just kind of permeated our family's church life. And then when I went to college, I was going to be a history teacher. That social studies, history, high school, middle school, it's going to be a good life. Did that degree. And then because it was a Disciples of Christ related college, it was a small Culver Stockton college, little plug-in. Because of that, there was a Disciples minister, there was a chaplain. Mm-hmm. And there was a small group of us. There were a handful of disciples on campus at that time, and we all knew each other and worked with the chaplain, and he, we knew each other, and in that place, he was in charge of that small college. Had always provided pastors for rural congregations out in the county. Mm-hmm. So a church of 10 or 20 people in a one-room church between farms 20 miles from town in rural Missouri. And they had always had a student pastor their whole existence from the college. Well, but by the time I got there, no one was going into ministry, and no one knew that in college, and they sure weren't ready to pastor a church.
Yeah. And
so the chaplain was, really saddled with this. Who was going to go to this little church? The last person graduated. Who's going to go out there? And he said, Doug Pfeiffer, he asked me, could you go out to this little Bunker Hill Christian Church for one Sunday and just pulpit supply? I've never written a sermon in my life. I don't know what happened of it. I think I still have it on one of those little tiny micro cassettes. My dear friend Ann, my good Catholic friend Ann, we loved church and all church related things. We did some of those things together in college. She went with me and recorded it and gave me some feedback when it was over, and I thought, well, that's it. I've done it once. I've helped them out for a Sunday. And then they said, can you come back next month? They had church once a month.
Okay.
Which worked with my college life.
Yeah.
You can't be settled every Sunday. And so I didn't have a reason not to go back, so I thought, okay, well, we'll try this. This will be a nice little phase. This will be a little income, a little spending money. Church is good. I love church people. And then it turns out that was the place I needed to be. Mm. And those rural Missouri folks, their ministry was training up from nothing people that are all in ministry. Of all the ministers that have been through that I had heard of, and I ran into them that had been at that little church from all these generations. We'll meet each other at General Assembly. We all have these 20 people in common. These 3 families that made a one-room church, and we're all still in it. I mean, so I think that foundation was. And then 5 miles down the road, there was another church. Why these 2 churches weren't together? The 20 and 20. Well, you got to know them all. You realize, that's how it works. But they said, well, can you come down here another Sunday? So I have 2 Sundays a month, 2 different churches. I learned so much just about how to begin in that role differently than being a member. And so then I was kind of in a crisis. Do I finish this degree? What do I do? I don't really want to go to graduate school. That's terrifying to me. Yeah. What is seminary? I don't know anything about it. But I did. I went to seminary, and it was even better than college. And churches along the way were a part of that. I think if I had not been actively in ministry during the school and ministry needed to go side by side to kind of keep them both going, I think. And I was just blessed by good people and good clergy people that nurtured me in college and in seminary, and they kept the church side of it going, so that I could learn the other pieces that were the more foundational, divinity side of things. Yeah. And so there was just never a time to go back and teach, because ministry was next, and it just kept getting better. And it might have been a week at camp, it might have been a mission trip, it might have been a worship season, or just, I don't know, all those things combined to create the nurture just to find me in places of ministry.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable that you say, the foundation is really your love of church people. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I mean, your true gift is your ability to relate to people, right? It's your relational skills, which is a dying thing across the board, and so people really gravitate towards your ability to meet people where they're at. And your love of church people is so evident across all the ministry that you've done. I mean, ministry with older people. I mean,
in my last call in Columbia, I really went there to do children, youth ministry. But when you're an associate in a church that has many needs and many things going on, there's the kids are in school during the day, so the senior adults, that's when they play, right? And so you get to, once you start playing with kids in youth group and building those bonds of friendship. The same goes for the older people. You can play the same games, for that matter. Yeah. What are you going to do? You're going to get in the minibus and go somewhere and have an adventure outside of the norm, outside of your regular life, have some faithful experience, serve somebody in some other way, just be together in ways that, so it, 2 different hats, but really the same hat, leader, bus driver. We always kind of laugh that I'm the bus driver, but the bus driver hears everything that they're talking about and can then work with that, and just, I don't know, that was kind of a unique blessing to have several age groups to know and minister on. And so that always carries over, but then I think back, well, that was the case in other places before there was ever a minibus or even an official plan. I mean, you just, people I think church people have this yearning for community, and not necessarily just in their same age group either, or their same demographic, but the churches that I've been a part of have just such a wide variety that they all benefit from their being together. And sometimes they're in their demographic and their age group, of course, and that keeps up. Those always keep spinning in those ways. But
well, and that's, I mean, there's a lot of trust in the bus driver for the fact of being able to facilitate and create some of this energy towards, because we're all yearning for that connection, and especially post-pandemic, I think whether we've recognized it or not, we're reaching for some of the connections, and it's the reason that church community is such a huge thing. It's so important, because where are the places that you're really able to plug in that way? And when you have a bus driver that's willing to, I mean, that's
Yeah,
funny,
no,
but that's really willing
yeah.
to facilitate those type of events,
Mhm.
that type of energy,
Yeah.
to say, hey, put this stuff down and just come be in the space. And we don't have to, we don't have to make anything overly about God. We don't have to make anything overly churchy or spiritual in any way. We'll start with the fellowship and the community first. And
This other stuff always comes out.
Always
every
comes out
single
of it.
time. Yeah.
And then they carry that with them even when you're not around. Now all of a sudden they're gathering together in groups and doing things.
Yeah.
They're going to visit each other, and the kids are hanging out
And then
together.
when the churchy thing does come along, yeah, I'm going to go because my people are going to be there because this is what we do together. And if I'm going to find God, I know this is the group of people that I trust finding God with.
And I associate that with you. One of the things that I've learned from you in reframing this word, my people, because
Yeah.
that's a phrase that you've used, so many times, and we kind of take it to mean like my people. You go over there and we're over here, but very much welcoming people into this idea of open welcome and really holding on to those people and checking up on those people and developing those deeper relationships with people and just being there. And we've gotten away from that a little bit, but when you have a leader that's doing that, it's so much easier to follow. And you see that. I mean, I would go into churches that you're at and see people so excited to see like what's Jimmy wearing today, and to have that interaction with.
Yeah, I've been in Mid-America, Missouri for most of my life growing up, and in churches in different places. And because the wider church was always connected to any of those places, that's been a unique thing. I mean, to go to, I get a little touch when I go to an assembly of some sort and think, yeah, I don't know what we did there at that meeting, it doesn't matter, but we saw so-and-so, they showed up again, and I haven't seen, I knew them when I was a teenager, and I just see how they've continued to be consistently blessed by this occasion, this gathering that we do, and they consistently maybe they've aged out of actively leading and participating, but they're participating because they're there, and just the sight of each other, it was good to have seen each other and to be there in that place. We lost that in the years of the pandemic, and then when we came back into things, oh my gosh, I don't know what we did at such and such meeting or assembly, but I know I saw so and so, and I was so glad to see them, and they feel, that people are still going. I think we all needed to see other people going because we were sure trying to keep going and keep our church life going, our faith going.
And this, I don't even want to call ministry a profession. I mean, it really is a call and
vocation, or
it's it's a thing that's stressful, and it creates anxiety, and it's a whole life really commitment, right? And you've seen ministers retire and ministers step out of ministry, but do you ever really get away from it? But we have these denominations and these churches that are really structured in a way that's laws and regulations, and this is the way that we do things. And luckily, we're part of a denomination that's relatively open and more progressive in those sense. But in your time of ministry, you have a denomination that evolves into openly expressing that everyone is welcome at the table, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race, regardless of creed, and to make that affirmation as a religious institution. What did that mean for you?
I grew up from about 7th grade, so I didn't know there was anything different. That people would say, oh, well, I never knew anything outside of that. And not because it was a welcome statement or an official statement that included so many demographics that I may or may not have found myself within, but just that was, I never knew it to be otherwise. And then it turns out that's our thing. And then it becomes more our thing officially as a church, right? I can't get all my general assemblies straight. I know where I was in what city, but I don't know what year it was, And years ago at some general assembly, I think the church was they were affirming. I think it was just affirming the welcome of gays and lesbians in the life of the church, but I think it was also affirming the ordination. So not only just as church participants and members, but and leaders, but as those who are ordained. And that was one of the. I mean, I realized later that was a major thing when the church made that move. That meant a whole bunch of us could keep doing what we'd already been doing.
Yeah.
Not because anybody asked us before or after how where we fell into any of it.
Right.
But just I don't cry at assemblies very often. I'm not one to get too. I mean, you know, every now and then a really good preacher is going to get you they better at that level. But that was like, I think that was one of the only times, and because I was so cared for, there were more people that were cared for me at that moment. As this big vote was going on and people had so many opinions in both directions about that, and the church went for inclusion, and I just remember thinking, oh, I can continue to do this, because if not, then maybe I wouldn't. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, and I wasn't even thinking about the future, but just to say that what I know of church is true, still true in this church that I'm in. So it was a long time ago now. I don't even remember what year that was. And the church has come a long way since then. I've come a long way since then. Leading up to this is, well, what are we going to talk about or not talk about? I'm like, it's open. It's a wide open book now.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been that way. And except for those dearest and closest people from college, seminary, church relatedness that have always known me completely. Their care through that process, and the fact that they would step out and make sure that our church made those moves. You talk about just being, I wasn't making those moves. I didn't stand up at a microphone and ask for anything. That I was just going to blend into the background like I always had. But my colleagues were wearing the t-shirts and making sure that things, and they were to receive no benefit from this in their standing, in their ordination, in anything. But they made those things happen. Most of them were young clergy women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Special.
Yeah. So yeah. That's a little background of church that just keeps with that kind of. You say, well, I'm going to stick with this now. They have stuck with me. They have said yes for the future as a church. I got to keep going and see if this calling, it's still alive and still able to be utilized, I guess.
And we wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of always interesting to me because we wouldn't necessarily think too much about a statement like that as it pertains to inclusion for our congregation, right? As it pertains to everybody else as believers. I mean, we're under the understanding and the belief that everybody should be welcome, that we should love everyone, that we should have these open arms.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting that we don't consider clergy, we don't consider the ordained, we don't consider those serving in the same way in our brain that same grace that we extend to everyone.
The general population.
Extend.
Whoever you are, come on in.
Exactly.
But once you're in, hold on it. We got it. And so we've been better about letting go of the hold on now. I've got some stipulations or some prerequisite lifestyles or opinions or beliefs.
And it opens a door to the way that you're able to serve and the way that you're able to walk through this mission of loving everyone else when you can feel some of that love back.
Yeah.
I had a moment with my congregation a month or so ago where, I was just struggling and got a lot of balls juggling, and I watched a friend go through some things, and I just had a bad Sunday, probably the worst Sunday I've ever had, and the first time that I can really remember having a bad Sunday where I was just like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this. One of those moments where I just wanted to go hide in the corner and just be a part of worship and not be in charge of making the whole thing happen. And I was open to them about this after the fact. And it's because of the way that they extended grace and because of the people that they are that I felt safe in that space, that I felt a renewed spirit through that service. And I felt it from the moment I stepped into that place. And to have that grace that can go back and forth and that we can also extend to our colleagues that's powerful stuff.
Because we've been there last week and we're going to be there next week. You know, there's this on the ongoing. We acknowledge the one day among many days, and the grace is because there's a bigger commitment, a bigger understanding, a bigger relationship that embraces that. If you showed up one time and it wasn't good, well, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
But of all the times that we've been together, that one rough Sunday, I've had a couple of rough Sundays as well. I think, well, that just didn't go the way it should have. For my reasons, for whatever reasons, but there's so many others that cruise along in the way that they should, and in so many good ways that I think people that are in it for the fullness and thickness of their relationship and with God, with each other, with the clergy person, they see that and they can, and we end up sitting with them in their moments too. So that's a two-way street, and that's a beautiful thing as well, that we can give that to each other. It's not just a one-way street. Sometimes I think that the church folks are kind of glad to see it go a little rough. They're not glad to see it be rough, but they appreciate that we all have the same kind of days. We all have that particular week it was not good for you, for me, whoever, and that doesn't define the whole thing. And you're in as deep as I am. You're in as deep as I am, and that is maybe helpful confessionally on both sides.
So there's humanity in all of it. And I think as human beings, I mean, it's important to understand that, we're not God. I mean, we don't have some special connection with God that no one else has access to. We want to feel seen just as much as anybody else. And, our purpose is to make people feel seen and to help develop people's relationship with God. And that comes from a place of, for me, that comes from a place of me having to develop that relationship with God and not knowing where that was as a young person and growing up and trying to figure out what is this relationship, and having people that were smarter than me, wiser than me, and had a deeper relationship with God walk me through. Here's what it might look like, here's what it might sound like, but here's what you have to do to be open to it. And really see me and accept me the way that I was, for all of my troubling personality and the way that I question things and the way that I doubt sometimes, and just to sit with me in that and trust that I was going to find God in my own way and not feel a need to say you have to do it this way, you have to believe this way, you have to think this way, and let me walk my way through it. And I carry that with me, and I know you as a relational creature, that pushing God on people is not the way that you go about ministry.
It wasn't pushed on me. I think that's the key. It wasn't pushed on me, and I wouldn't know how to. I was watching some of these video blogs, and it was playing in the background as I was listening, and well, after yours, then somebody else pops up in the feed, horrendous. Pushing. They were pushing. I said, whoa, what? Who is on Michael's show? How is this? And it wasn't. It was some preacher I didn't want to listen to anymore because he was pushing. It was brutal. Yeah. It was coming into Easter or something. I thought, that is not how we're going to do it. We can't. That's just not who we are. Yeah. And luckily, there's enough of us out there we can spread out and be among those who are like us in the way that we're going to approach God and how we're going to share God with one another. Love in the way of Jesus that has been beneficial to us and helpful to our own spiritual life, and hopefully can be to someone else through us.
Yeah.
There's always something going on at church that you can, reflect upon. The good, the bad, the ugly, the hilarious, the most meaningful, the touching,
Well, this space is interesting because there's so many what you'd call Christian content creators, and there's a pastor that I really like, and he's got a podcast called The Basement. Tim Ross, The Basement, check it out if you haven't. And he's very adamant. He's like, this is not a Christian podcast, and we fall into these niches, right? And we want to live in that place, and it's like, I have all this Christian content, and I'm just gonna push God down people's throat, and I'm gonna get people saved. But that's not how people come to God in that way. People are craving relationships and connection, and if you develop relationship and connection in the way that you walk is in the direction of God, people are going to come with you.
Listen, that Christian podcast isn't there. They're in a different city, in a different place, and they don't know you. And I don't think they really care when you've hit some top, bottom, on the side, around in life, and need that faithful companion that church provides. I mean, we're not out there I'm just going to save you and
exactly.
walk. I'm going to be a part of your saving as much as you're a part of mine. And we're going to be here tomorrow too, and next week, and after that.
And that's the pastoral piece of leading people and having the relationship. But there's the component of, we won't even call it motivation because that's cliche, but there's the teaching part and the education part. And people are craving information and wisdom and knowledge, and you just telling a story about your experience of I didn't know that the ministry was going to be the step for me, right? I just was pulpit supply this one Sunday, and then it trickles into this other thing, and then
$50 to get me through college, right?
And there's a kid somewhere, or maybe a person contemplating a second career somewhere that's just
Well, see, when you mentioned earlier that the good people, the church where you grew up, were put up with all the whatever. They were putting. Well, I don't think they really put up with it, but they put up with it. Everybody puts up with a lot with kids, right? But they also saw something. I guarantee you, they saw something, some interest and some genuine interest in the bigger. You weren't coming there to be entertained, to be given, give me on my walk, but you came to give and receive and listened long enough. And we always are able to make those. We see it in kids. We've been around the block enough to say that one is going to. That person's going to do something unique in this way potentially. And in the church camp, all the years of counseling and directing church camp, some of the kids that were in junior camp, 4th and 5th grade. Turned into, as we watched them grow and show up, there were a few that ended up going into ministry. They ended up either professional ministry or involvement in such a way that they would come back and continue to be at camp, or leaders in their congregation, or in some ministry somewhere.
And you can spot
them along the way, and or you even as an 8th grader, you'd say, call me in about 4 or 5 years. I think you're going to make a great counselor. And it turns out they did, and then because they just had a way of taking it all in and giving it back out and caring for people. I don't know. You can peg them sometimes.
But we don't trust that though. We don't.
And we don't do it enough.
Yeah.
Why are there no people going into ministry? Because we haven't taken time to say, this is an option for you. We are so afraid everyone's looking for prestige and money, and the ministry is not that. There's so much prestige and money. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so we don't put that out there as an option for what are you going to do with your life? Maybe there is something like this that you're going to do for your life, but if they know a clergy person that they can see that it's a life and that they might aspire to or want to be like, but otherwise be a banker and be a super church invested Christian. Great, that's fantastic. But surely among that group, there's one or two or several that can do it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even express any interest in it had I not, sat, with pastors in their offices and listened to that pitch, right? Because there's always a pitch of like, I think this might be a thing, and that's never going to be the selling point. The selling point is, hey, come to this Lenten devotional group, and I want you to sit in it. And come to this.
I want you to lead something.
Exactly. Come to this prayer circle.
This is what I can do. I can't do these other things, but I can do this.
Come
I do.
For some pastoral care visits to the nursing home. Those kind of things. And once you realize that that's what this is about, it's not about, let me go stand on the chancel and be in the pulpit and preach. That's not the whole picture of this, and we kind of glamorize some of these things, and people say, well, no way, I'm scared to give a speech in front of 5 of my classmates, and I'm not going to get up there and preach. But it's bigger.
I was super shy, like prior to except at church, probably, right? That I wouldn't have spoken in front of anybody or known any more than a small group of people. But you never know when you're handed the opportunity, and then also the encouragement to go ahead, give us a little something. Go ahead, do what you do. Let's see what that is.
And we grow up with this kind of energy of not trusting that people are going to see us. It's one of the reasons that we really crave the attention that we do. I mean, social media and everything, adds to that. But we don't trust that people are going to see where our talents are, where our interests are, where the places that we've been blessed. And so we feel like we need to shove it down people's throats. But people see you.
And bringing them along, as you said, bringing them alongside is the way that it just works. It just works. Maybe that was the Jesus. Maybe that was the Jesus model. It was the Jesus model.
Yeah, it was.
Just come alongside me, walk with me, and then we'll see how you do with this. Oh, you're gonna be fine. No, go ahead with yourself. Take these people with you. You're good. Just.
Yeah, and it must have been, and here in Holy Week, as we're, talking about all these last moments that Jesus really got to share with his disciples. I really, just think friends. Jesus really, in these moments of doubt and fear, he could step outside of that, which he did it many times, and just look at his friends and say, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
They've got it.
And they realized that eventually. They had to trust him. His seeing that, and then
it's easier said than done.
It is.
And so along this journey, you've done all this different ministry, and now you've stepped back into a situation where jack of all trades, it's all on you.
Solo pastor at a medium-sized church, which that's everything from paper production to website management. Not well, but enough to get into it, and I some weeks I seem to just spend most of my time adjusting thermostats. I never knew that adjusting of the thermostats. There are so many thermostats in this small building that need adjustment for every group that's coming. Or why is our light bill so much? Because thermostats are not doing what they need to be doing. Again, now I've talked about it for
churches
for too long.
The next investment that you make is a Nest thermostat in all of your spaces that you can adjust.
They're all on my phone now.
Yeah,
the beautiful thing is that all the thermostats are now on my phone. So from wherever I am, I can double check that we're not cooling or heating a building for 3 days for nothing, right? And so they're working, they're not working. Oh, there's a leak. All this kind of stuff. So jack of all trades. There's that, but then there's journeying with some people in some medical, situations, and baptizing middle school kids, creating worship every week in 2 different styles, and then special times in between. All of it. But I like the variety there. I can't sit still. So this is, I can only stay at my desk for so long. I can only be out and about for so long. I can only do all these things. So I just keep moving. Just keep moving around. And I'm in a community that's easy to do, in a church that welcomes that. And if they don't see me here, they see me somewhere else. Yeah.
Suits your personality.
It's good. It's good that way. There's a nice flow of things, and a lot of people that are ready to continue making all those things successful. I think that's super helpful.
As we step out of the pandemic and we get back into this full, it's hard to even call it full because we're still adjusting in the post-pandemic time. But what does church ministry look like as you kind of go forward? Not necessarily here, but in a larger sense.
Yeah. I think the theme of our conversation has been the relationships that people have. They longed for that so much when they were away for a period of time. And we still talk about that. At some point, we'll stop talking about the couple of years. But this last week, our college young adult group was talking about everything they describe of their life, which is the last 5 years, or where I was, or what it is framed in some way with the pandemic, before, during, after. And the thing that, we all kept up. We're a high-tech enough world that we kept up with everything going on, and we were able to go home and continue doing all the things, and we were all fed, and we got our food, and all of that stuff, and we took care of things so that people didn't lose everything. All that was all right, but what we missed were the people, and it's interesting, the people that have come back out because they remember that, or they yearn for it, and they want that again. Some people, I don't think, made it on that. They made it through financially, they made it through professionally, they made it through even with their families, health-wise, everything, except they never could fully re-engage with certain communities. Probably their workplace and, things in the community that they might have been a part of, but they forgot how important it was to be a part of a church community or something like this. And the church is the one we're talking about, right? But they just forgot until they do show up for something, and then you see folks come back in. But it took a lot longer. You think the first week we're open, we're all back. Woo! We can go back. We can, even in masks, we're all back. We'll be apart, but I can see you, and we can at least be together. And we got rid of the masks. We got closer together. Now we're all back. We're standing next to each other in elevators, and and terrified still. Yeah. But doing it, we're all back together. And I know my people here continue to reflect that. Wow, this is what I missed, and this is what I needed. Everything else was covered, but the people, especially folks that are by themselves or have some, some people have so many people in their family, in their bubble. That's who they were with anyway all the time. But within the church, the diversity of the people in a medium-sized, any size congregation really
makes a difference.
That church is an extension potentially of their livelihood. Not monetarily, but like their emotional livelihood, and they're finding it again, and they're getting it back. So what's different? Not the same old things. Like we may be coming back to the same routine, and all the same stuff is fine, but we weren't doing that really well. That had kind of been suffering. Why isn't anybody coming? Because we've been doing it the same way. Couldn't ever get out of that habit. We had a break. Do we bring all that back and hope for the best, or do we say, what are we really going to do to feed that need for livelihood of, emotion and spirit? And
talked about it being a good thing, in the sense that if you go to different churches and you really ask them, who are you? Churches can't tell you, this is who we are. They can tell you, this is what we do. We do this, we do this. They can't tell you who they are. Yeah. And stripping some of the this is what we do away can allow us to spend a little bit more time figuring out, who are we?
Yeah.
Who are we, and are we defined by, those ministries that we used to do? Did they actually work at all, or were they just something that we committed to because we've been doing them for the last 50 years?
And it worked for a while. It wasn't meant to be a lifetime. It was meant to be a season.
Do you have to sit in that same pew every single Sunday? Is there anything wrong with those pews in the front? They're not stinky or dirty. We make sure that they're clean.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a different vantage point in this space would give you a different experience on a Sunday morning. And maybe that would be good for you to have some different perspective, not just physically, but also spiritually.
Yeah.
And well, I had a conversation on the podcast with a friend of mine that's a psychologist. We were talking about suicide. We were talking about mental health. And we were talking about this idea that really we think that we're hyper connected because of social media and all this instant communication, but in reality we're more disconnected than ever. And so as we go into this pandemic time, I feel like we're still connected, and then we have this free time to check off the things of, do I really want to commit to keep, to losing my Sunday mornings again, and half my Sunday being gone after coming out of the pandemic, and let's just throw the church thing away because I'm plenty connected enough.
Still cruising, right?
I can watch church online. I can interact with these people on social media. And
Turns out I can pray from home. That got me through. Yeah, here we go.
I'm good, and I think it hasn't hit some of those people yet that's not really connection. And I've seen some of those people go through situations of losing people or some mental health issues, and really start to come to the realization that they don't have community anymore. They don't really have connection.
Yeah.
So what's it gonna take for us to get people back?
Yeah. That over and over again we're figuring that out. If we're not, again, it's back to what are we offering?
Yeah.
Maybe what are we offering? And we're just trying to get, I think, people to seek the relationship out again, to seek the people out again. But it may not have the entertainment quality from before. It's really just, it doesn't need to be because it's between people. It's a people thing.
Well, I mean, you talked about this earlier, but this idea that you get a group of kids together and you're playing games or you're doing this activity or that activity, you're going to leave that time gathered together with smiles on your face and laughing, and you're going to leave with joy in your heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes, because that's the contagious, right? It's like moments are what build momentum. Moment after moment after moment after moment.
We've got to remember, thank you for that reminder. We've got to, it's the moments that all gathered up push it forward.
And I mean, you're, like I said, you're this shining light of, I know that wherever you're at, that relationships are being prioritized.
I hope so. That's always I don't, that's not my goal in the car when I'm driving there, but I think that's I know that enables me to be present in that place, and I have that need too. So from that, absolutely.
And it's as a person, as a friend, that's something that really suffers in my personal life. Is right, like I make an aim to be present in all the places that I'm at, but that's the strength of mine is not making sure that all my people are good. It's like very much what's right in front of my face.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. People lost the desire to get people together. I think they're glad to be a part of it. Please, invite me in, and they'll show up. They'll bring what they need to bring.
Don't ask me to host it.
But don't ask me to host it, and I'm not gonna put the group together, and I probably won't, have a plan or all that kind of stuff. But then they come, and it's like, well, this turned out pretty good. You all, it's lost. It's a lost. I moved almost 2 years ago, and in moving 130 miles away, from a group of people that were established and patterns and friendships, that's huge. It's just who knew that would be so hard, and then you have to start over all of those things and start the same patterns in a new place. Turns out that here I'm. If people are going to be together, you gotta initiate. Somebody's got to initiate. I think the church does that a lot. I mean, that's what we do. We're the initiators of that type of thing. This year, part of our Advent Christmas scenario, it was one of the sermons somewhere in there. It was about hospitality or in the invitation. I don't even remember what it was all about exactly, but that we finally got to the point we could be in each other's houses again. We could invite people to be a part of things, and maybe that's what we need to be doing, is inviting people into what happened to the parties. I mean, it's not so much. The season isn't about the parties, but it kind of is about the parties, the gatherings that people, reminds them of this season that they're a part of, whatever the party is, whatever the gathering is. People say, yeah, sure. But how many people took it upon themselves they decorated their house, they have a lovely location, why is the dinner table not once a week a place for people to just share in some way or another? So
we have trouble enough just doing that within our family.
I know. It is. It's so hard. But it's really not.
Right.
So what we found out in the pandemic was that we took away everything. So then we were doing those things again. Well, now you got to cook. Everybody's got to cook at home. Everybody's got to eat at home. You don't have things to run to in the evening. You found all this family time again. All that happened. And no matter what your situation was, you found that what might have been lost. And but
you're giving people a lot of credit.
We've lost it again, though. I think. I mean, it's just all of a sudden we got back into it. We're fully back, and we've lost the chance to say, you know what? This weekend there's nothing scheduled, but I'm going to make sure that 4, 5, 6 people get together in my place, your place, who's ever, and to get those things together. So I brought back the Christmas open house.
Okay.
It's kind of I learned it from pastors way back that just some mentor types that had solid ministries, and they and their families would host an open house at Christmas time. We'd love going to open houses, as a kid, church family. We'd go to the pastor's open house, and that's where you saw your church friend. It was just outside of church, but still within that, celebrating the season together with those folks. And even as a clergy person in a large church, when Sunday school classes would have their holiday gatherings, we would travel around to all of them and just hit them all and just be able to be with all those people in a setting outside of all the stuff we were doing at church for the season, right? So I appreciated that, and I thought, if I can ever do that type of thing, that would be fun. And I've moved all this Christmas stuff across America, I feel like, and unloaded it again, and I need to use it, so I'm going to drag out all the stuff, and Christmas open house on a Sunday afternoon, and I had 45 people come through my little house. They were everywhere. They were in the kitchen, they were in the living areas. I had to keep people on a tour all the time just because there wasn't enough room for people to sit. So have you seen the downstairs yet? Come, let's go look at this. And so they loved it. I think they loved it. I don't know, they lingered around. We had all this food and punch and coffee and, all the stuff that you think it's just this out of some magazine that, entertaining magazine or something. But it was just what we needed to see each other differently. Perhaps they needed to see my life, They needed to come in my house. They got to see where I live, and know that side of me, not just the guy that shows up and they only see in the building. But
and you said, there you go again, driving the bus, right?
Yeah.
The example.
Yeah, so exactly. And we had I enjoyed it. It was completely exhausting. It was exhausting getting ready for it. I had a couple church members help me because I can't pull this off by myself, right? So they came a couple hours early, and that's all hands on deck, getting all the stuff ready, and they stayed late to put it all away and clean it all up, and they were exhausted. I was exhausted, but it was because we just got to see this wide variety of people, and of all ages came. And there were cars up and down the street, or people parked in my yard, and some people had to make sure they got up the steps okay, and that's all right. And I don't know, it's hard to do those things, but we just got to do it. And when it was over, I kind of thought, I never want to do this again because it was so much work. But I will, because because it's just worth it. And so that goes back to church, that people got to remember that it's worth it to step out and invite somebody into a fellowship space.
And how hard is it? I mean,
Yes.
Jimmy's just committed.
It's not that
He's
hard.
just committed, everyone. He's committed to doing a monthly open house on a rotating basis that rotates the different houses.
Sure.
And really set this out. Because the fellowship thing is the piece that's missing. I mean, I've even found that in my church during Lent, we went back to having a Wednesday Vesper.
Yeah.
And we cooked the first night. We do a 30 minutes and then a meal, right? And we cooked lasagna and did the whole thing the first night. So the fellowship is the important piece, right? The service is just extra icing.
Or not, right?
That piece is just
the
extra on top. It's the
Exactly,
fellowship piece and getting back in the
Exactly.
habit of spending that time together and laughing and telling stories and meeting each other where they're at. Because when that person is struggling, now you have the relationship to build upon to say, hey, Jimmy, you don't look like you're doing well.
Yeah,
What's going on?
right.
And you have the relationship and the foundation.
And I've seen
to build
you doing
upon.
well in other places, so I can see the
Exactly.
difference. Right.
Exactly.
And I know where you live.
Exactly.
I mean, we're pretty. I mean, you'd think the church people are really close, but sometimes people don't know where each other live.
No,
They don't know the variety of our settings. And until you kind of do some of those things and you get in each other's houses or each other's neighborhoods to really see just what people's lives are like when they're not together for that hour or two at church in whatever point in the week, you just have a better understanding of how you can be neighbors, disciples together.
It's a word we don't use anymore.
Which one?
Neighbors.
Neighbors, yeah, the neighbors.
But I mean, that's the whole church piece, right? The church is supposed to be community.
Yeah,
And we kind of got away from that a little bit.
we did. So people, yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, maybe people share wine, maybe people are sharing coffee, maybe people are sharing food, maybe it's a walking group, right? Whatever it is that gets people together in your places, front porch sitters. I don't know, you have a pool. If you have a pool and you haven't hosted a luau, I don't know why you have that pool.
I mean,
If you have a pool table and you haven't, have a little mini tournament among people who don't even know how to play, then I don't know what to say.
if you have
Your
a
dining room holds 15?
yes, if you have a
the
favorite
last time you had
recipe that
15
you
people in
make,
there?
if you cook, if you bake, at the end of the day, you have these skills for a reason.
Right.
Utilize them
Use
in some
them.
capacity.
The benefits just are so much more than the setup. But you got to get to
And
it.
you're going to be anxious and nervous and probably a little flustered beforehand,
Sure.
but the actual thing,
It's so
knocks
it's
all of that
always
out.
worth it. It's always worth it.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is.
and it's much, we're super concerned with inviting somebody to worship. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's a great thing. But how about you invite somebody to a meal? How about you invite somebody to fellowship? How about you take somebody out to dinner? Invite them over to dinner, invite them to coffee. How about you just develop a relationship with somebody
Exactly.
before you say, hey, meet my church, meet my God, right? It
I
doesn't
don't
have to
know.
be
I don't
that.
really know you.
Exactly.
You don't really know me, but I want you to have this most intimate experience with your spirit, my spirit, and the spirit of the congregation. Yeah, there's a lot of homework has to be done or pre-work.
Okay, since we're in Holy Week now,
Yeah.
and it's Good Friday, we're approaching Easter. What's on the other side for you of the newness of the restoration of God's creation?
Yeah, Easter isn't the end of the story. It sure seems like it.
Yeah.
Land, Holy Week, all the details. With Easter, it's done, right?
Yeah.
I'm even on vacation Tuesday to Tuesday next week just to recover and
Yeah.
go do some other things that I get to do now that these tasks are complete. But it's not the end; it's the beginning. We should be beginning to run differently. Around this place, we're preparing for summer, unique opportunities. It's a stewardship season,
Of course.
There's 4.
Every church does that.
4 weeks. Well, some do it in the fall. Seems like summer, fall, we're a spring, 4 weeks, which can be a dirge in some. We're not making it. It's an exciting moment to have a focus. We call it a focus. I call it an emphasis. Call it whatever you want. We try not to use the word campaign because that just it's stressful in some people's lives. But just, hey, I'm glad for if Jesus is resurrected and I have found, disciples that are willing to speak that good news. How is it that we speak that? Well, we live into a stewardship season. Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay to say, with this faith that I have and this experience that I've gone through with Lent and Easter, how is it that I'm investing in this for the longer term, for this year, for this season? We're doing one. It's one that cycles through our churches pretty often. Go and do the same. And so we need to know that. We need to know what that means. Will we talk about our money? Yeah, a little bit, but it's a side. It's a part of the whole picture. And so that's what we're doing at church. I'm always excited personally about I love spring. It opens up. I'm a car person and a boat person, and those two things are spring, summer, and I'm okay with winter. Love winter too. But that's done, and so this is the time that other opportunities open up and occasions to do the things that we do with people potentially too. We're back out with our people, so yeah.
That's big. That's big.
I don't know. But in a way, it should be really. That is the big thing, but not too big because remember, we're not going crazy about this stuff. Moderation keeps us all in a good way. And I think people are okay with that.
Yeah.
People walk in and say, oh, no, it's okay. We're going to invest in the times that we're together, but we're not going to overdo this.
We gotta work on the problems. We gotta link up to solve them. We gotta keep on evolving. Gotta be side by side. Give it up. Gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side. Yeah. We gotta be side by side. Gotta be side by side. We gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side.
I was really hoping that your answer was going to be getting the boat out.
Oh yeah, in my back of my mind, it's getting the boat. When am I getting the boat out? The cars get out first, and then the boat, and then everything's okay again. And my biggest task personally is to make sure I'm blocked off and I do not schedule things on the days that I'm supposed to be off in a way at the boat, at the river. Because it's hard, because there's things that need to happen. Well, it's going to be on a Saturday. I know that works for everybody. Let me give that up.